Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Now, I've shown this before. I'm going to show it again, okay? Because here you see Senator Ted Kennedy. Obviously, Senator Ted Kennedy has passed away from a glioblastoma. He also had brain cancer. It kind of makes you wonder what's going on Capitol Hill, because that's the same rare, deadly brain cancer that Senator John McCain just succumbed to. So, but that said, this is 2006. This is Brett Kavanaugh's second confirmation hearing for the D.C. Circuit Court. And Senator Kennedy is asking for, in 2004, Orrin Hatch asked Kavanaugh whether or not Manny Miranda, who is Orrin Hatch's staffer and was stealing emails from the Democrats having to do with judicial nominations, predominantly from Senator Patrick Leahy, Senator Ted Kennedy is now asking him 2 years later, now that he knows these documents are stolen, would he have done anything differently? Would he have not relied on these documents? And Brett Kavanaugh is going to tell Senator Kennedy under oath that he never saw these documents, never saw them.
The documents that were taken here from the committee, and that you have the familiarity, Randi, documents, and you've indicated that you, in reviewing them, had no understanding or awareness that they had been taken, been stolen. Have you ever gone back now that you are aware of it and seen what decisions you may or might not have taken on the basis of documents that were illegally taken, to see whether you may have made some judgments or decision to reach certain conclusions now that you know that they were not properly taken? Have you ever thought, well, I ought to go back, I might have made some judgments or decisions when I was working for the president, and I ought to take a look at this, since you know that these documents now were taken? Have you ever thought about that?
Senator, there's a very important premise in your question that I think is incorrect, which is I didn't know about the memos or see the memos that I think you're describing. So I think. Oh,
you never saw any of those?
No, Senator, that's correct. I don't know. I'm not aware of the memos. I never saw such memos.
I never saw them. I never saw such stolen I never saw any memo. Now that you're telling me they're stolen and all that, I never saw those memos. Never saw them. Fast forward. 2018, couple days ago.
You had the full text of my letter in your inbox before anything had been said about it publicly.
Oh, my God.
Did you find it at all unusual to receive a draft letter from Democratic senators to each other before any mention of it was made public?
Well, the only thing I said on the email exchange, if I'm looking at it correctly, Senator, was who signed this.
You said you never saw
this. Which would imply that I thought it was a signed letter.
It was sent to you. Were you surprised to get it? I mean, it's obviously a draft. It's got typos and everything else. Were you surprised the draft letter circulated among Democrats ended up in your inbox?
But
from Mr. Miranda.
I think the premise of your question is not accurately describing my apparent recollection or understanding of the time, because I wouldn't have said who signed this if I thought it was a draft. And my email says who signed this.
Maybe you were
So you didn't realize what you had was a stolen letter signed by me, that you had a letter that had not been sent to anybody, had not been made public?
Well, all I see that I said was who signed this. That's all I see.
Oh.
You said you never saw it. Now he shows it to you. Well, all I said was who signed this. Yeah?
Did Mr. Miranda send you an email asking you why the Leahy people were looking into her financial ties?
This is Priscilla Owens.
Is that what this email is?
Yeah.
I'm just asking you.
Well, can I take a minute to read it?
Of course.
Okay.
Can I have a beer?
And this incident was 4 days before her hearing on July 23rd.
And what they're showing is the 2002 email from Manny Miranda to Brett.
Did I send any of the emails on this chain? I don't think so.
Oh my God, are you a liar?
I think I'm CC'd. Or in any event, if he said, why are the Leahy people looking into this? From Manny Miranda.
Yeah.
I don't really have a specific recollection of any of this, Senator, but it would have not have been at all unusual for, and this happens all the time, I think, which
it
is
happens
the
all the
Leahy
time.
people are looking into this and the Hatch people are looking into
Well,
that. I think.
You say all the time, 2 days before the hearing, he told you that the Democrats were passing around a related 60 Minutes story,
Right.
and he said his intelligence,
Intel.
suggests that Leahy will focus on all things money. Well, that appears to come from a stolen email to me, stolen by the Republican staff member, sent to me the night before, and then given to you the next morning. Were you aware that you were getting from Mr. Miranda stolen emails?
Not at all, Senator. It was part of what appeared to be standard discussion about, it's common, Senator,
It's common.
at the White House, it'd be common to hear from our Leg Affairs team. This is, in fact, in this process, it's common to hear. This is what Senator X is interested in. This is what Senator Y is going to
Was
focus
it common to have copies of a private email sent to a particular senator?
copies of a private email sent to a particular senator.
That's what you have.
Yes. Wouldn't that jump out at you? For
What,
example,
what,
if
what are you
it-
referring to?
Well, Mr. Miranda is telling you about emails sent to me the night before. There'd be no way that he would even have that unless he stole it.
Unless he stole it, which he did. But back in 2004, Orrin Hatch asked him if he ever received any emails from Manny Miranda, and he testified no. Back in 2006, Senator Ted Kennedy says, now that you know that you received stolen emails, maybe you would like to tell us what you would have done differently as you were shepherding through these judicial nominations. And he said, oh, no, there's a premise in your question that is false. I never saw those emails. I never saw them. Well, during this particular confirmation hearing, finally, the National Archives released a few emails. And one of these emails clearly show that Manny Miranda, who was an Orrin Hatch staffer, a lawyer on Orrin Hatch's staff, sent Judge Kavanaugh several of the stolen files. And this went on for 18 months between 2002 and 3. And the email chain that was released by the archives describes not only Brett Kavanaugh receiving them and responding to them, okay, but it also says they wanted to meet at Manny Miranda's house so that Judge Kavanaugh, who wasn't a judge then, he was a White House lawyer working on judicial confirmations, could receive, quote, useful information about 2 Democratic senators. And one of them was Patrick Leahy. Mr. Miranda was sending stolen emails to Kavanaugh, and Kavanaugh was receiving them and responding to them. This is another lie. And this is a big lie about a material fact, about something he did as an adult, about lying for a confirmation hearing for his current job on the D.C. circuit. My God, how many times do I have to play this? We did this weeks ago, okay? Weeks ago. And we put it up on Facebook, and I put it into as many news feeds as I could afford because you have to pay, right? It's called boosting. And we put it out there. And still there's no conversation about the fact that Brett Kavanaugh lied about receiving stolen emails with a subject line that said, Intel, confidential, highly confidential. And that he testified in 2004 and 6 that he doesn't know what they're talking about. He never saw them. Doesn't know what you're talking about. In 2004, he didn't know what they were talking about. 2006, he tells Kennedy, oh, well, you know, the premise of your question is that I saw them. Well, I never saw them. And now he's testifying to Leahy. This is common. This happens all the time is what it is. He also was asked about, judicial nominations that he was shepherding. He said he never personally worked on any judicial nominations. Meanwhile, the evidence clearly showed that he was trying to push through and was working on Charles Pickering from Mississippi, who had a really bad civil rights record. He also worked on Justice Pryor. He was copied on emails that were sent to the Pryor Working Group. And he also worked on Priscilla Owens' confirmation, which is when he was getting the stolen emails from the Democratic Senate Judiciary Committee members. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.